So let's move on to the golf course. We will not be discussing whether or not we should purchase the golf course or not purchase the golf course. That decision is in the rearview mirror. What we will be talking about are things that we are challenged with today. However, before we go there, I would like to clear up some scare tactics that were used. And these scare tactics are things that were told to our community that have proven not to be true. Things that were very, very much a concern to people before they even voted on the golf course. But let's set the record straight on two of these things, shall we? The first scare tactic that I would like to address, and I refer to them as scare tactics. I don't know what you would call them, but I'm still hearing this from people because they still believe this. Remember when we were told if we don't buy the golf course, a developer will build high density, low income housing? Well, here's the truth about that scare tactic. Long before the colony was ever even starting to be developed, the Army Corps of Engineers came and surveyed this land, and they identified two blue lines. Now, blue lines are classified as United States waterways. Here you see a map taken from the United States Geological Services. You can visit this map yourself. I have outlined the colony in red. As you can see, there are two blue lines running through the entire community. These blue lines, again, have been classified by the Army Corps of Engineers as U.S. waterways. A developer cannot build upon a U.S. waterway. A developer would have to go to Washington, D.C., and get the Army Corps of Engineers to reclassify this property. I believe that that would be highly unlikely. You can also see a third blue line. That blue line crosses the corner of Nutmeg and Jackson. If you look at that corner, you can see where a developer came and developed and built houses around that corner, but not the entire corner. Because of the blue line, the rest of that corner is Glen Arbor Park because the developer could not develop it. As a matter of fact, the examples that were used during the golf course mini meetings of other communities where a golf course had closed and a developer came in and started to develop the land was also a little misleading because those golf courses that closed did not have blue lines running through them. So it's kind of like they were comparing apples to oranges. As a matter of fact, here's a screenshot of a map that was in an HOA produced video. It's very clear that you can see how the HOA has the blue lines outlined. They are the creeks that run through the golf course. Something else that I termed as a scare tactic that was used was that the golf course will go brown. It'll become overgrown and rodent infested, and homeless encampments will happen. Do you remember hearing that? Well, here's the truth about that. On September 8th, in 2021, our councilperson, Lori Stone, held a city town hall here at the colony in our auditorium. And she had Deputy Director Brian Ambrose give a presentation on the city's aggressive yet compassionate plan of addressing the homeless situation. He described the homeless outreach team, which is a combination of city employees together with the Murrieta PD. Here are a couple of slides from the presentation that Deputy Director Ambrose gave to us. As you can see, the plan that the city implemented several years ago is a very comprehensive plan. And they gave this presentation to us back in 2021. Recently, there was a posting saying that there was a new plan that the city is implementing. No, The city has had this plan up and running for several years now, and way before the golf course meetings even started to happen. Here's a bit more of the truth. On July 26th of last year, the mayor of Murrieta and our councilperson, Lori Stone, came here to the colony and attended a town hall that Jeff Sherborne put on, and I gave a presentation at. And during that meeting, they took questions from the residents who were in attendance. A lot of the questions involved, what if the golf course closes? The city stated clearly that it would not allow the golf course to become overgrown with weeds because it would be a fire hazard. And if the owner did not take care of it, indeed, the city would step in. They also said that they would not allow an unhealthy or unsafe environment to occur. And they did address the matter of a chain link fence. They said the city would not allow that either. So now that we've debunked and proven to be wrong what I term as the scare tactics that were used, can we all agree to leave those behind? Can we all agree that if we hear somebody talk about that or say something about them because they still believe them, we can show them or talk to them and let them know how they were nothing more than scare tactics? On February 7th of this year, the last budget town hall meeting, there was also a general session. At this general session, the board allowed residents to go up to the podium and make comments or ask questions. Here's one of the comments made by one of our residents.
And how these things are written. Now, Article 20 says all of the expenses of the golf course, the restaurant, and the pro shop are the expenses now of the common expenses. That's you folks. That's all of us. That's the HOA. Now, there's not a single word mentioned about the income. And we've been represented from day one that that income goes to an LLC to be formed. And that's where the income's going to stay for the golf course, for the clubhouse, for the pro shop, and for the restaurant. It's all going into a separate entity. We don't get any offset for the expenses of the golf course, the restaurant, the pro shop. Now you guys can say, oh, that's wrong, Glenn. We would never do that to you. It's done.
Well, it certainly seems like Mr. Bosworth knows what he's talking about. But let's see how the president of our board responds.
Article 20 is in effect if we get hold of the property, period.
So, where is the truth? Does Mr. Bosworth know what he's talking about? Or does the president of our board tell him the truth? Let's see if we can find out. Recorded May 20th, 2022. Over a year ago, Article 20 became an active part of our governing documents. So for over a year, Article 20 has been in full effect, not if and when we get a hold of the property. So if anybody would like pages 1 through 17 of what was filed, let me know and I will email you a copy of it. But wait, Mr. Bosworth also mentioned something about an LLC. Let's see if we can find out a little bit about that. Recorded the 20th of June, 2022, a year ago. Articles of Organization, California Limited Liability Company. Filed with the Secretary of State. And who is it signed by? Oh, Bruce Delfonso. So now you've seen and heard the videos. You've also seen the documents that have been time and date stamped as when they were filed. So now here's the question. Who And what do you trust? So whose best interest is really being served? Why does the HOA refuse to provide copies of court documents and rulings, or the monthly receivers reports? May 18th of this year, the court ruled that the value of the performance deed is $2.7 million. Now, we were told this by the president of our HOA. However, he didn't tell the rest of the story. That if the property is not redeemed by Majestic, meaning that if Majestic does not pay the $2.7 million, that amount will be issued as a credit to the bid of the HOA at the foreclosure sale. This was told to us at the last board meeting in June by our vice president. Here's a portion of that order that I have highlighted. The entire order is available for you to read if you wish. So what does this order that we just talked about mean to the special assessment? Since now we have the $1.5 million, which is the maximum amount that we authorized to purchase the golf course, already covered by way of the credit that the judge said she would give to us if Majestic did not redeem the performance deed. Shouldn't that mean that the special assessment should be reduced from almost $2,000 down to roughly $1,050? Or are they still planning on collecting the full amount? You know, the question of if we can purchase the golf course for less than $1.5 million, would we be getting a rebate or a refund from the special assessment? That question was asked several times during the golf course meetings, and the consistent answer that was given was no. Any money left over would go to the golf course.
So accordingly, the court found that the value of the performance deed of trust is going to be $2.748 million, which may be included as a credit to our foreclosure. So if it goes to foreclosure, we don't have to put a dollar up until someone bids at least $2.748 million. So that's pretty good.
Now, what we just heard the vice president of our HOA say is not accurate at all. That if the bid goes above 2.7 million, that is when we would have to put out a dollar. Not true. That's not how it goes. Because in May of last year, the HOA membership, by way of a vote, we approved a maximum bid of $1.5 million to purchase the golf course. This means that if the purchase price exceeds $1.5 million, we're out. We cannot bid above $1.5 million because that is the limit that we authorize the board to go. Now, I don't think that the vice president of our board meant to mislead us or deceive us, not at all. I just think he just doesn't understand. Let's go through the next few court documents rather quickly. On May 31st of this year, Judge Asbury recused herself from presiding over the fraudulent conveyance trial. Apparently, some evidence came into the court that indicated that her mother attended a meeting in 2007, and that meeting was with the owners of the golf course. The judge, citing this as a conflict, recused herself and stated that all orders that she had issued be vacated. This was on the third day of the trial. On the following day, June 1st, the attorneys for Majestic filed a motion to disqualify Judge Asbury from the performance deed case and set aside all the rulings that she had made. They based their motion on her recusal from the fraudulent conveyance trial, citing after learning the full extent of the involvement of the judge's mother. Here is a portion of the motion that Majestic filed to disqualify the judge, and I will paraphrase what I have highlighted. It basically says that the judge's mother was a vocal opponent of the HOA purchasing the golf course, and that she was previously on the board of directors, and she had attended a meeting in July of 2007 where the owners of the golf course were also in attendance. The entire notice of disqualification is available for you to read. On June 6th, the attorneys for the HOA filed an objection to disqualify Judge Asbury from the performance deed case, and they cited the reasons that were stated in the motion by Majestic were misstated, and there really wasn't any evidence to support what they said in their motion. Now, the motion that our attorneys filed, I have distributed, and you could read in its entirety if you wish. Okay, so here's the status of where we stand. On June 8th, Judge Asbury filed her own notice, striking down the disqualification motion that Majestic had filed. But then the next day, the judge's court issued a minute order reassigning the performance deed case to another judge. So the status is both the performance deed and the fraudulent conveyance cases have now been reassigned, and Judge Asbury will no longer be presiding over any case that involves the colony. So here are the facts as I see them. The mother of the judge presiding over the performance deed and the fraudulent conveyance cases had indeed owned and lived in the colony. She also served on the board at a time when the board attempted to purchase the golf course and levied a special assessment. To me, that sounds like she was an advocate for the purchasing of the golf course. I hate to say it, but it does seem like Majestic does have a point here. So something that I believe that we should know, but don't, is why wasn't an objection filed years ago by the HOA versus allowing the judge to preside, exposing the HOA to potential setbacks and further delays, which we are now experiencing? This information was known, so why wasn't it acted on? Something else that I think that we should know but don't is what was the compromise the HOA attorneys presented at the mandatory settlement conference that was ordered by the court back in December of last year? Why haven't we been told what the HOA offered to settle and end this then? Remember, Article 20 is in full effect and has been for over a year. Article 20 obligates the HOA to a joint maintenance agreement. Now, isn't that the basis of the performance deed lawsuit in the first place? Article 20 also obligates the HOA to assume all financial obligations as common expense. These are the financial obligations that the golf course may fall short of. And the language in Article 20 is all of these things are for any owner of the golf course. So, what was offered at the mandatory settlement conference? In my opinion, we deserved an answer to that question. We deserve to know what were the deal breakers. Exactly what did we offer to end this? I have no idea, but I would sure like to know, wouldn't you? So here's a little bit of truth about Article 20. Did you know Article 20 was never required? Changing the CCNRs was not necessary to purchase the golf course. Now you might be thinking, well, wait a second. The lawyers told us that it was. The board told us that it was. So what do you think you know, Pam, that's any different than this? Well, let's see. There is documented evidence that in 2003, virtually the same law firm, the same HOA president, put forward a ballot measure for the HOA members to vote on. And they voted to purchase the golf course and they approved a special assessment. As a matter of fact, they actually started even collecting the special assessment. Again, in 2003, the same law firm, the same HOA president put forward a ballot to the HOA membership and they voted to purchase the golf course and they approved a special assessment and even began collecting that special assessment. All of this and not one word of the CC&Rs needed to be changed. And that is the truth. So here's a question that we should already know the answer to, but don't. Why was Article 20 filed over a year ago, just 15 days after the golf course vote and months before any court rulings? Kind of seems to me, was it just a coincidence that after Article 20 was approved, the HOA began giving money to the golf course instead of purchasing vouchers for rounds of golf? Was that just a coincidence? I don't know. So moving on, why was the receiver appointed over 3 years ago? The answer to that is to enforce the judgment that our attorneys want, and that was primarily to maintain the fingers and slopes and the golf course. Now remember, since last October, the board has been fully responsible for the receiver and manager of the golf course, and the court appointed that receiver to enforce the performance deed judgment, which was to primarily maintain the fingers and the slopes, as well as the golf course. So let's see how that has been working out for us, shall we? Let's move on to the receiver's report, just briefly. Since November of last year, the receiver's reports have been changing. At least that's what I've noticed. Because I used to question invoices that were attached, like for airfare and hotel bills and rental cars. But now those invoices are no longer included. The HOA funding is being reported a little bit differently now, too. Instead of being as HOA contribution or HOA funding or owner contribution, it seems to me like it's now being lumped in and reported as greens fees. Now, greens fees are the sums of money that golfers pay to come and play golf. But if part of that money is a gift, doesn't that make it look like more golfers are actually paying to play golf than there really are? And the HOA funding is being delayed. It used to be reported the same month that it was authorized and given and received. Now it's a little bit different. I've sent out many, many months of receivers' reports, so you can look at them yourselves and see if you see a difference. And if you do, like I do, ask why. Here is some more information that I think that we should know, but we don't. Like how much money to date has actually been spent on the golf course? How much money for attorney's fees in the litigation? How much money for attorney's fees for other things? Because you do know there are other things. Those 17 pages of Article 20, they weren't written for free. And what about the receiver and management? We kind of know how much has been spent there because that's a flat sum fee, $2,500 a month for the receiver and $7,500 a month for the management. Okay. And what about the monthly funding that we are giving them? Well, we have a better handle on that thanks to Chuck, because he is reporting that for us, so we've got a pretty good idea of that. But what about the consultants? Because every time we hear talk of the golf course, it's, oh, the consultants say this, the consultants guarantee that, the consultants made this recommendation. Who are these consultants? They certainly don't work for free. And what about the experts? We're constantly hearing that an expert said this, or an expert gave that opinion, or an expert said it would cost this much. Well, who are all these experts? We know of one expert because he testified in court, and I can guarantee you he didn't do that for free. What else don't we know on how much we are spending on this golf course? I have no idea. In January of last year, we were informed that the board met in executive session and decided to purchase rounds of golf for the total sum of $60,000 to help out the golf course. The rounds of golf were to be given away. To this date, the board has never shown an accounting of this giveaway. We have no idea who those vouchers went to. We have no idea how many were actually given out or how many were redeemed. Now we've heard, oh, we gave them to a charity, or we gave them to a church group, or we gave them to some young golfers. We don't know that. We have not seen any documentation to support any of that because we have never been shown a full accounting of the $60,000 we gave away. Something else I think we should know, but we don't. The golf course committee. Who's on this committee? Now, many, many, many months ago, there was something in the newsletter. This is how the golf course committee is organized. Well, that is outdated and that is no longer accurate. I know that for a fact. So how were they recruited? Does anybody remember getting a notice from the HOA saying, hey, we're forming a golf course committee. If anybody would like to be on it, please let us know. Because I certainly don't remember any notice like that at all. And who selected these people? And how were they selected? And when and where do they meet? I'm sure there are people here who would like to sit in on some of these meetings and see exactly what do they do and why does it even exist? I have no answers for any of these questions. But don't you think we should?
Picture because there's expenses coming up here this month. First thing, you may have seen some of the work starting already. The city did come and say you need to get some of these slopes cut. It's starting to happen. There will be an expense for that will hit their bottom line. And now as you get into June, July, and August, it starts to get warmer, which means more water. We're not going to probably be having the big rainfalls that we've had. But also, as it gets warmer, you get less golfers in the afternoon. So they're going to try to manage that the best they can. They've been doing a very good job of really trying to manage their expenses around that. The other thing, I started to touch on it last month, they are going to make a formal request to their, to the Kyle, the person that's managing, is going to be making a request to his boss. He's been interviewing actual golf course superintendents. Right now, they have a bunch of people, I don't want to diminish what they're doing, but they know how to maintain yards and lawns and things like that. There's an opportunity, he thinks, with the new revenue coming in, that they can actually go ahead and hire a golf superintendent, somebody that knows the golf business, somebody that knows the chemicals, knows the seasonality and how to manage greens and how to manage tee boxes and how to manage a grounds crew and what needs to be done and what priority. So he's going to start with the approval process to get that done, and I think that will also deliver a better product. Chuck and I met with him, and if I remember right, Chuck, he believes the return on the better product will cover the cost of that.
So there you have it. You just heard our board president say the city stepped in, just like the mayor said that they would, to make sure that the golf course doesn't become overgrown, as it was becoming. I also kind of felt like I was being prepared not to be surprised for the funding requests that were coming, because summer's here, water usage is going to go up, the temperatures are going to go up, so that means less golfers are going to be playing. Is that the feeling that you got? Because it is what I got. And then, most shockingly, after 3 years, the receiver, who was appointed by the court as an expert to run a golf course, is just now looking to hire someone who is experienced with golf course management, with managing the grounds and the greens, and which chemicals to use and which procedures are best. After 3 years, do you find this reasonable? Because I gotta tell you, I don't. Now I'd like to move on and wrap up our portion on the golf course. But before I do, I'd like to play a video clip because I think it's very important that this information gets widely distributed.
Needs within our gate. Some people can write that check no problem, and some are on this other side living check to check and need to be more frugal with their finances. So we need to find ways for everyone to afford those dollars. Now, we're just experimenting here. None of this is in stone. We're just throwing things against the wall and see what'll stick. One of them, obviously, is to write a check. There are people within our gate that have the means to write that check, put it in their rearview mirror, and move forward. Another option could possibly be, can we find a way to do either monthly payments or quarterly payments over some specific amount of time along with some interest? There might even be an option, who knows, to where we can have a homeowner pay at the time of sale for those that are really strapped. These are all the different types of things we're going to look at to try to come back with solutions.
This is the actual screenshot while the video was playing. There was no trick editing done by me. This is it in its original form. I am terribly concerned that there are many of our neighbors and friends and residents here who are totally unaware of this, who continue to think that when the special assessment comes down, they will have the opportunity to make payments on it. There are many of our neighbors and friends here in the colony who are not financially secure, who need to start putting what little bit they can away each month now so that they're not completely blindsided. This deeply troubles me.